We are all set. So, hello, tech people. Hello, artificial intelligence enthusiasts. Welcome to this session. This is Dive-In's Festival for Diversity and Inclusion. It's IGI's 6th festival that we host here in Jordan. Initially, Dive-In, let me tell you a little bit about Dive-In. Dive-In was launched by the Lloyds of London in 2015, but now has grown into a global event. It's the biggest diversity and inclusion event in the world. It attracts more than 128,000 participants and takes place in more than 40 countries worldwide. So we're very happy that it's the insurance industry that has made it to make such an event on such a global level. So IGI is a proud sponsor of this event, and we've hosted it for 6 years, and we've been named by the organizers as country leads. So in the future, I hope near future, when there are other companies in Jordan who want to organize the Dive-In Festival, they need to coordinate with IGI to coordinate the effort in the country of Jordan. So let me tell you a little bit about IGI. IGI was founded in 2001 as a small Middle Eastern company and has since grown into a truly global business. We now have 8 offices over 4 continents. We listed on NASDAQ exchange on the day the world went into lockdown. In March 2020, IGI listed on the NASDAQ exchange to become the first and only Middle Eastern insurance company to list on the exchange. So we consider diversity integrally part of the company's DNA because of who we are and because of the employees who come from different ethnicities and backgrounds. DE&I has always been an integral part of our corporate social responsibility and has the biggest budget after cancer research. So basically, we have our corporate social responsibility covers a multitude of areas that includes cancer research, education, elderly care, women empowerment, the arts, and music. So the theme for this year's Dive-In Festival in insurance is the power of inclusion, unlocking innovation. So innovation is a big theme worldwide. So if you look at the financial sector, Khaldoon, they're all talking about innovation. If you look at the insurance sector, so innovation is the theme of the year. So we had to think of a topic that would be linked to innovation, and what better topic than artificial intelligence, the topic of the hour. So we had to search and find scholars who are working on these 2 topics, artificial intelligence and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we got people from far away. We have Dr. Olga Kanj. She's visiting from Canada. We've invited her to come and speak to us. She's come from Canada, from the University of Waterloo. We have Dr. Dorothy Andrews. Dr. Dorothy is based in Charlotte, North Carolina, close to where I studied. I studied at Duke, so close to Charlotte. So she works at the NAIC and is very passionate about issues that have to do with data and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And of course, the one and only IGI. From IGI, we have Mr. Hatem Jabsheh. He is Group Chief Operating Officer. He is a big proponent of innovation. And he is the man behind IGI's technological progress. I have to say that, and we have to give him credit for that. Finally, and last but not least, our brilliant Dr. Jordan Al-Zu'Bi. He's going to be our moderator. Brilliant young man, brilliant. You have to listen to him, listen to the work and to his life story. One day, if you have the time while we're networking, to listen how he's made it through adversity to reach levels that only your ambition and hard work can make you reach. So Dr. Al-Zu'Bi is like IGI, the first Jordanian, but the second Arab to earn a Ph.D. degree in risk management and insurance. As an insurance, and he is an insurance economist specialized in insurance regulation and economics, insurance fraud, insurtech, climate change risks, etc. So there is a lot of specialization. At the NAIC, he is involved in creating model laws to address serious regulatory issues related to race, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and discrimination in insurance markets. Finally, Dr. Al-Zu'Bi is currently a visiting scholar at Emory University and a professor at National Taiwan University. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Al-Zu'Bi and all our panelists.
All right, thank you so much for having me. I will have to say it's an honor as a Jordanian insurance economist to be in my beloved Jordan and to speak about diversity, equity, inclusion. Thanks to IGI for having us, for hosting all of us. Before we start our session, I would like to give you a bit more detailed information about our session. So I will start with Dr. Dorothy Andrews. She's currently a senior behavioral data scientist and actuary at the NAIC, National Association of Insurance Commissioners. Background of what we do. As Ida said, we create model laws and we work closely with the state insurance departments, commissioners, to regulate the whole insurance industry. One more thing about Dr. Andrews, she has a tremendous, large experience in the insurance industry. She is focused on artificial intelligence and building predictive behavioral models for insurance company and insurance tech. So I would say, Dr. Andrews, welcome to Jordan. This is our first speaker, Dr. Andrews. The second speaker, we have Dr. Olga Kanj. I would say Dr. Kanj, she's also a close friend of mine. So she completed her Ph.D. in risk management and insurance and finance at Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada. She's currently a professor in the Department of Statistics and Actuarial Science at the University of Waterloo. I have to say this is very important. We are minorities as Arabs, insurance economists in the US. Currently, we have only 6 insurance economists from the whole Middle East. And Olga is the first Arab woman to hold a PhD degree in risk management and insurance from the whole world. So this is a huge accomplishment. We need more of course, of Olga. Her research interests revolve around diversity, equity, inclusion, on risk management, innovation, of course, and corporate governance. You have 22 years of experience in the financial services industry, and he began his career in 2001 with Spear, Leeds. Also, he moved to Amman afterwards, and he started a new company called Indimaj, I think, brokerage, which is an asset management and a brokerage company. And this is a success story. He successfully sold it in 2019 to a publicly traded investment bank. Then he joined IGI as their investment department, head of their investment department. And in 2017, correct me if I'm wrong, you became IGI's Group Chief Operating Officer. So congratulations in your role. And I know you have made significant progress at IGI. That's all I have for our speakers. I will start giving you a little bit of background. So as you know, the theme here is to examine or to look deeper on the effect of artificial intelligence on driving diversity, equity, and inclusion. This here. So I will start firstly, we'll give you some background, and then a little bit of interesting statistics, and finally economics of diversity, equity, inclusion. So this is one of my favorite quotes for our queen, beloved Rania, Queen Rania of Jordan. She once says, we need to empower women, because when we empower women, we empower our family, we empower our community, and we indeed empower our nation. This is a bit of conclusion, you think of it, is that diversity, equity, inclusion reinforce principles within communities and organizations, including the insurance industry. So here's some statistics I will give you about gender gap and women leadership, or women in general in the insurance industry. We have overall 60% of women in the world are involved in the insurance industry. So we can say women outnumber men in the industry, which is great news. But, however, 19% of them only hold board seats, and many or less of them hold leadership positions. So we're talking about 12% of such women make it to the top leadership positions. Women face unequal wages. This is not only in the Middle East, but in every single continent. I would say globally, women still earn about 25% less than men. Like we're talking about the same position. Like if I am insurance economist and Olga insurance economist, I make more money than Olga, unfortunately. Men outnumber women in the six-figure salary, especially from 100K to 120K range. In Iceland, which is the country with the smallest gender pay gap in the world, women still earn only or about 86 cents of a man dollars, which is, this is in Iceland. This is the country that has the smallest gender gap in the world. So this is, again, unfortunate. Women, are more loyal and working longer at the same insurance company compared to men. But such loyalty is not aligned with the promotion and increases in pay. So if we have more women loyal to your company, I think you need to be more thankful, you need to appreciate, you need to have them more involved in leadership positions. Women also tend to occupy lower corporate levels and progress to the first managerial level, but however, fewer of them continue to climb to the next level, which is again unfortunate due to the environment we have. Here's a little bit of statistics on gender gap close by region or across continents. We can see the MENA area is way in the bottom, so we are still behind compared to other continents. Very quick, because Olga is gonna speak in more details about the economics of diversity, equity, inclusion. I would tell you having more women in leadership positions would reflect in the financial performance of every single insurance company. They have a better financial performance. Risk mitigation, having more women in leadership, more leadership position is associated with less financial misconduct and fraud, which is, again, would reduce risk. Also, it reflects on employee satisfaction and retention. When you have a woman, a leader, the retention is pretty much small compared to when you have a man in a leadership position. And the work-life balance for employees is even better. And finally, it's enhanced reputation. When you have a woman in leadership position, like, you look better, you offer a good public image about your company, and because if you can see better financial performance, less financial fraud or financial misconduct, and employees are happy, of course, your company will look good. Since I am also the moderator, I will have to introduce again Olga. She's gonna speak next. So Olga is going to give us more detailed information about the economics of diversity, equity, inclusion. And what I would tell you, Olga, given the information I provided about the economics of diversity, equity, inclusion, and women leadership in the insurance market, we have seen that the insurance industry today, like many others, is evolving to embrace diversity. We have seen, for instance, mentorship programs. We have seen also diversity training provided by many insurance companies. So my questions for you, like, I hope, what other measures are taken by insurers to promote diversity? If you can speak about that, and why companies should take extra efforts to increase diversity. Those are the first two questions, and I have pretty much 3 more questions. So if you can just start, and then I get to my next question. Yes, if you need, yeah.
So yeah, let me try to answer those questions. Just a little bit more on where we are in terms of embracing diversity and in terms of quotas introduced on the corporate levels around the world. So 2003, Norway was the first country to introduce quotas to have more females on the board of directors, because leadership is the key. So if we have leaders who promote diversity, this is where it's gonna go the long way. So these quotas were introduced 2003. Now here we are, 20 years later. Europe has been doing a, frankly, not bad job in terms of quotas. So a quota would be mandating the companies to increase the leadership. So we have at least 40% women on the boards of directors in Norway, Spain, France, Sweden, and Iceland. Those are examples. Oh, sorry, that's a typo. 30% in some other countries in Europe, as well as some African countries such as Kenya and Rwanda. Now, for the, as we call them, Anglo countries, which are Australia, Canada, US, we don't have quotas, but we have set and achieve or explain. So lots of paperwork, lots of reporting on what kind of goal did you set. We have bills passed very recently, we're talking 2018 and 19, asking the public corporations to report their diversity among their top management, among their board of directors, for gender, minority, ethnicity, race, and so on, in order to promote diversity among the top management, which in turn, hopefully, would further promote diversity among the employees and push for more diverse, whether like females, breaking the glass ceiling and moving up to the higher levels. Even with the quotas, we don't have achieving those 40% and 30% women. Corporations are facing those explain attitudes, and they have to do that, why they did not achieve those percentages, and they did not. So they cannot. They are making big efforts, but we'll need more mentors, more women at the top, in order to bring more and more women with them. So this is where the countries stand. For Arab countries, we have UAE, which enacted a law in 2020 mandating equal representation of men and women. Other Arab countries were making efforts, such as this event, for example. These are more of corporate industry promoting forces, right, in order to advocate for gender diversity and having more women in the leadership positions. We would definitely want more of that, but it's worldwide. It is a difficult thing to achieve. It's a worldwide issue, so we're doing our best. In the industry, we have very tough promoters of gender diversity and getting women on the top management position, to the point such leaders as Christine Lagarde, former IMF head. After the crisis, actually, she stated even to the point that if it was actually Lehman Sisters, we would not have gotten into such trouble during the financial crisis. So same Christine Lagarde and other promoters would tell us that we need positive discrimination in terms of let us create those programs, especially for women, let us really discriminate towards promoting women in order to get more role models, more leaders, and so on. But we as researchers, where do we stand, right? Our job is to not fanatically clap and promote all of that. We do our job to diligently look at why. Why do we need that? Yes, we have economically and socially, this is the fair, right, treatment, but coming from a finance perspective, and this is where corporations would be looking at. They would be looking at their bottom lines, and they would say, really, that's too costly for us. We want figures. So, and I teach my students, I'm a finance professor, I teach my students that, and that's the main pillar in finance, that maximizing the shareholders' value is the most important thing. So getting that money into the pockets of the shareholders, what all of the corporations work for. And we want to do that more than anything else in companies. So we come as researchers and look at the figures in order to back all of that up. And in economics, it is considered, we're talking about risk, it is considered that an average woman is more risk averse, so an average woman would not like taking risk, and that's good in terms of insurance. We can sell more insurance to women, but whenever it comes to directors and leaders, we do see that some of those women who get to those positions and break the glass ceiling, they are as fierce, they are as good in making decisions, risky decisions, investments, and so on as men. We do have a lot of research backing that CEO females do achieve better performance in insurance companies. When we just solely look at insurance companies, looking at appointed actuaries and how conservative appointed actuaries are as females versus males, they do make better estimates, they do make more accurate estimates, and they do drive the less risky strategies in insurance companies, not hurting the profitability of the companies at the same time.
My next question for you, given the economics again of diversity, equity, inclusion, and insurance economists have done research in this area, trying to look at gender diversity versus racial diversity versus religious diversity. My next question is for you, should we only care about gender diversity? And if you can give us some practical example on how to go to increase such type of diversity. And finally, since we are talking about artificial intelligence, how we could potentially make use of artificial intelligence to enhance the role of women leadership and diversity, equity, inclusion across not only insurance markets, but also financial markets. If you can, within 5 minutes, go over them, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, really quickly. So that is a very main area that I do. I dive into ethnic diversity as well and other kinds of diversity. These are some statistics of how we're looking at trend here. We do care about diversity because it's not just gender diversity. We want to break the unison of thought. We want more on our board of directors and our management of people who, it's true, they would disagree. There will be more difficulty making decisions, but at the same time, it would not be those decisions where everyone is clapping for the same wrong decision every time. So we want other types of diversity, and again, research has shown that combining an index of different diversities such as age, education, the experience that directors had, their ethnic background and race, even their technological background, which is becoming a big part of our corporations today, this kind of diversity is bringing the most benefit to decisions and to corporations. We do care about the diversity of ideas that we're bringing, and of course, every corporation has its own culture, and they know how to apply the best of diversity into their leadership, into their industries, right? There are industries that are over-dominated by females, and we want diversity there. In industries such as the STEM, which is insurance is one of them, we want more females and we want more other ethnic representation. We want people with technological background sitting on our boards to make technology decisions. And as time changes, who knows what kind of other diversity we might be needing. This is the situation of representation of ethnic backgrounds in insurance companies. We can see there is a dominance of Anglos, and once we have more diversity, better decisions are made in terms of risk and reserves. Some research that has been done on experience and age and technological experience. In terms of innovation, that's a big issue, right? We do want people with technological experience on our boards and leadership positions. So one of the leading papers and researchers who did look into all of those kinds of diversity, they do find that having all of the kinds of diversity does lead to less volatility, so lower risk and better returns. We need to have those rigorous tracking, right? Auditing for those programs and meaningful KPIs where we can measure that success within our corporations. As for the AI, and Dorothy will speak more on that, I would just, because I work in InsurTech, I want to show you where do we stand, right? We have all of those emerging technologies that are hype, and the insurance industry picked that up as well, like Internet of Things, which now moved a little bit back. Artificial intelligence, machine learning is still staying there steady. Blockchain, been using that, and robotics. Just an overview of how much interest the startups are getting in terms of investments. It peaked high, up to almost 80 billion, and 2022, it's around 90-something billion as well. Where do we stand in terms of countries? States is leading, then China, and then the UK. Within the Middle East, we have Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates leading the AI investing and funding companies. And in insurance, we care about the diversity. I'm not going to talk much about where can we use it. We can use it in predictions of loss probabilities, right? Some machine learning with whether it's fair or not in terms of our insurance premiums and so on. And it does seem to have a lot of benefits. One of the benefits that we want to talk about is the mitigating or embracing the diversity, right? And with the diversity and the bias that it creates, so in order to mitigate the bias that Dorothy will talk about, the biases most probably, to mitigate the biases. So how it works, right? If we give AI biased data, it will get us out biased data. And by now we all kind of know that. So we need data that is more diverse. We need to create data, so generative AI could create more diverse data. It could work in cleaning that data that is non-diverse and help us in those terms. And we want developers who are also of diverse backgrounds. So those developers who run those programs, who develop all of those programs, they also should be of diverse backgrounds. We do lack females in our STEM fields, and the amount of female students in computer science decreased tremendously over the years. We need more role models there in the education field and role models in the industry fields. So we need to create that link in order to promote all of that. My kind of point of view regarding diversity is that we don't want, quota is good. It's good because it pushes those companies that were lazy enough to do anything. But we don't want just checking boxes, right? We want real action in promoting all kinds of diversity regarding, depends on our environment, on our industry and culture, in order to get, to achieve good results that the diversity is promising us to achieve. In terms of bias, I think Dorothy would agree with me that with the AI and the biases, we also want a human touch, and we've talked about it a little bit. So we might not want to eliminate all of the biases in the AI altogether. We still want that human touch.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Olga. We appreciate your time and your insights. I think next we will talk about the use of artificial intelligence in promoting diversity, equity, inclusion. Dorothy, as you know, artificial intelligence has been used in the insurance industry to identify, for instance, fraudulent claims, to help with underwriting, to even settle claims. I myself have used machine learning when it comes to identify fraud. It would, you know, we create certain type of models. It would red flag suspicious claims. Given the power of artificial intelligence and the fact that, for instance, today the United States is a leading country when it comes to spending money on the use of artificial intelligence. So if you could ask Dr. Andrews, you know, tell us why is diversity and inclusion are important when it comes to the development of artificial intelligence, and where do women belong in the artificial intelligence development cycle? And if you can, you know, toward the end, give us some cases where we have bias and it could potentially harm the insurance industry and harm having more women involved in the insurance industry. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think they're, oh, there they go.
And if you can finish within 15 minutes, that would be lovely.
Pardon me?
15 minutes.
Okay,
please.
thank you. So, as Jordan stated, I want to talk about why diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to developing AI. And it has a lot to do with bias and where bias hides in the data and in the modeling process. So, the sources of algorithmic bias are many when it comes to developing algorithms. And it's not just the machine where you find the bias. There's bias in the organization, there's bias in the way we define the problem, there's bias in the data, bias in the model, and there's also misuse and incorrect use of the model, and we make poor generalizations. We often apply models to problems they were not designed for, and that introduces even more bias. So the National Institute of Standards and Technology is really big in the United States, and they are emerging as a reliable source of model governance when it comes to big data and algorithms. And they have a model of bias that uses the iceberg. So there are basically three broad categories of bias. There's statistical bias, there's human biases, and there's systemic biases. Statistical biases lie above the waterline, and they're often the easiest biases to resolve. So for example, if you were to sample a group of people, and you notice that you had, if you go into the general population, and you notice that your sample has all males. Well, that's easy to fix because you can just resample. You can resample until you get a representative population. Human biases, those are the biases that occur between our ears. And I'm going to talk about cognitive biases in a little bit more detail. And they lie just below the waterline. And they're a little harder to detect and a little harder to mitigate. Systemic biases, these are biases that are ingrained in our institutions. So in the US, for example, if we talk about our criminal justice system, our criminal justice system often favors white people over non-white people. So for example, you might have over-policing in communities of color and then in non-communities of color. And what that does is it results in digitizing the behavior of police officers that pull people over. Because as soon as you pull someone over, they write you a ticket. That's not the end of it. That ticket becomes digitized. It becomes a data record. And then someone is going to pull that data record into their data set, and that data set is going to be used in a model. So if you have an overpreponderance of people of color being issued tickets, the logical conclusion for most would be that they're committing more crimes. And that's not necessarily the case. It's a human behavior that drives the bias that we're seeing in the data. And you see bias in education. I think we had a conversation earlier about how history books here in Jordan are going to be rewritten. Because there's an expression that says, history is written by the victor. So when the victor writes their history, they usually write it in their favor, and other people get harmed. So it's that type of stuff that becomes really difficult to eradicate in society, these systemic biases, unless you just dismantle the whole system and start over, which is not going to happen. So I wanted to talk about algorithms and underwriting because this is a huge source of discrimination. And what's happened is we've gone from a very traditional focus that really involved the human person being involved in the process. Rating and underwriting was really based on who you are, based on data you provided. With algorithms and big data, we are now able to look at how people behave. And we're trying to understand how people behave through the data they generate in our society. So I have a digital footprint, you have a digital footprint, and companies are now accessing those digital footprints to put that data into their models to try to figure out who you are. They're trying to determine what your character is. They're trying to determine how honest you are, if you're going to file a claim. And honestly, as a psychologist, I don't think we should be trying to figure out people through their data. We need to be talking to people. So algorithms have allowed us to digitize the underwriting process. And we need more human oversight in these processes because what we're finding is by relying on these algorithms that are ingrained in a lot of heavy mathematics, which we think is axiomatic, accurate, and fair, we're learning that that is not the case. We need more human oversight, more common sense to interpret those results. So this is the modeling process. It's a high-level depiction of the modeling process. And it really starts where the modeling process begins, and that is defining the problem you want to solve. And as you can see, you would go through business understanding, then data understanding, data prep, modeling, evaluation, and deployment. Well, bias can enter that process, into this modeling process at each one of those steps. And as Olga mentioned earlier, without a lack of diversity and inclusion in these modeling processes, we compound biases. We leave the algorithm to its own devices to look at the patterns in data and amplify those biases. So as I said before, statistical bias, this is really the easiest bias for us to resolve. It's above the borderline. If I get a bad sample, I can throw it back and resample. And then when I resample, I want to definitely check to make sure that I have every population adequately represented. Some of these other types of biases, selection bias, measurement bias, and omitted variable biases, again, these are statistical treatments to data that we can actually go back and correct. Now, here is something called the Cognitive Bias Codex. And you can actually find this on the internet. If you just Google the Cognitive Bias Codex, you will find it. It's an interactive diagram, and it catalogs over 180 biases that we know of to date. And why is this important? Understanding these human biases impacts how people sit down and design algorithms and who's included in that design process. And so some of the big ones are groupthink bias, confirmation bias, blind spot bias, and the ostrich effect, where you put your head in the sand and you forget about everything else. Blind spot is just like a horse. You have those blinders on, and you can't see any other possible solutions. Confirmation bias means you only believe evidence that intersects with your beliefs. And groupthink bias, which I'm going to go into a bit more, I think is one of the most dangerous types of bias in modeling. Because this occurs when you have a group of people who think the same way, who look the same way, and are not accepting of anyone's opinion who is different. And in modeling, these are typically male-dominated arenas, and we do need to have more intrusion of more diverse people, because the models that are built, they affect the whole spectrum of the population, not just that one spectrum. But they also tend to favor certain groups that have been favored and privileged in the past. So it's really important to think about diversity here, and making sure that if you have modeling teams in your company, make sure there is a breadth of experience and diversity on those teams, so that you do get a lot of critical analysis. I know at the NAIC, in my job, we review models from that have advanced statistical models in them that insurance companies file with their insurance departments. And we're a small group. We're a group of about 6 people, and we're a very diverse team, and we critique every single model. But we each see something different in our critique, and this is why diversity is important, because what I see is colored by my experiences and what I think is important, and what my other colleagues see in models is colored by their experiences. So you need that breadth of experiences when you're doing those types of reviews.
Dr. Dorothy, just you have 3 more minutes to go, but if you can go through why women, like how women can be involved in the development of artificial intelligence, and some examples very quick, if you can.
So some of my use cases here will highlight that. Some of you may be familiar with the Amazon hiring algorithm. Is anyone here familiar with that algorithm? So Amazon designed this hiring algorithm, and it was designed to try to increase the number of female IT personnel at Amazon. And unfortunately, what Amazon did was, one, they used their own database of resumes, which reflected poor hiring patterns of women. And so what the algorithm ended up doing is it sort of searched through all these resumes, and it found bits and pieces of information that are uniquely associated with women. Like it found things like, did you go to a women's college? Did you play a women's sport? And women tend to use different words on their resumes than men. So men use words like captured, advanced. Women use words like aided, more helping, nurturing type words. And so the algorithm went through these resumes, and with other resumes that came in, it saw that Amazon did not hire women in great numbers. So the algorithm learned not to hire women with new resumes. And so eventually they had to retire that resume. Now, had there been some women on the modeling team, they probably would have said, this does not make any sense. Instead, what happened with Amazon, they went through public humiliation in the press before they finally decided they were going to retire the algorithm and not even use it and dispense with all efforts to develop it. Another issue of bias found in algorithms has to do with what is it you're trying to measure, and is that a faulty measurement? So for example, this is a really well-known health company in the United States tried to develop an algorithm to decide who should be referred to for specialist care. And they ended up using this metric, said, well, we'll look at how much money has been spent on this particular population or on all populations. And so they found that less money was spent on African Americans. So they took that to mean that African Americans were healthier. But that was a faulty conclusion, because and this is why the social systemic reasons are really important. Because in reality, in the United States, African Americans have less access to health care. So that's why spending was less. And yet, this algorithm really did cost some of these patients some really critical care. So when you think about what your algorithm is trying to do and what data you're using, it's really important to ask yourself, are there any social policies and practices that cause my data to look this way? And is that harmful? These are the kinds of things you need to think about. And my last example here, all of you have a tracker device, Fitbit device or something like that. I was really disappointed to learn that this green light technology that's embedded in these devices, they don't penetrate dark skin as well as they do light skin. So, and there's lots and lots of research on this. And again, this has to do with not having a representative training set and not having a representative modeling, a group of people on your modeling team. So diversity and inclusion is extremely important when you're developing AI. Otherwise, it will only favor certain people, and it will disfavor other people. I think that's my last slide. Oh, this is lessons learned. So here, diversity and inclusion, they're vital to building good and ethical AI. Representativeness is really important in the data and the modeling teams. Data set size does not guarantee algorithmic fairness. We always talk about big data. Just because the data is big doesn't mean it's fair. Algorithms can discriminate without having any explicit data on your protected class, just the way the Amazon algorithm didn't know people were female, but it figured it out from other clues in the resumes. And this socio-technical approach, I preach this all the time, is we really have to stop being so addicted to measurements and think more about the social conditions that we live in that may be influencing the data that gets collected on us. This is super important. And as a famous statistician said, all models are wrong, but some are very useful. So we can't be so blinded by the mathematics. I mean, I'm a mathematician, I'm an actuary. I understand what's going on under the hood of these algorithms. And so I know it's not as complicated as people make them appear to be. So we have to stop being blinded by the magic of the mathematics and ask critical questions of every algorithm that is used in our workspace, in our lives, that mediates our transactions with each other and our environment.
Mr. Hatem, I think it's your turn. I will have to say I've done my job as a moderator, and I have some questions for you. So now it's to do your homework.
I'm not going to bring the scientific aspect to this.
Here we go. So to be honest with you, I was told by somebody you love so much, and who doesn't love Vaida, that you are so much into technology and innovation. And given Dorothy's presentation, my question for you, has IGI hoped into artificial intelligence training, and to what extent it has impacted the company? Is it a game changer for you? That's my first question for you. If you can answer briefly, and we can come back for discussion in a few minutes.
So about 2 years ago, we went on a huge data transformation path. So we expanded our data team. We brought in some outside consultants. And we have a data team of about 9-10 people right now. She's led the head of data for us at IGI group-wide is a woman, a young woman in her 30s, very, very smart. We had a consultant whose actuarial background, but he also applies Bayesian mathematics and Bayesian probabilistic outcomes to actuarial studies. So we came up with our own machine learning, not artificial intelligence. You know, we need to differentiate on our reserving process, especially when it came down to IBNR. And we did it as a proof of concept last year. And we're looking at how we can use those tools, whether it's in reserving, whether it's in claims, whether it's in underwriting, you know, that we wanted to prove that the stack, the technology stack was there and the knowledge in-house was there for us to be able to go to the stakeholders and say, look, guys and gals, sorry, that we have this. How do you want to use it? How is it going to benefit you? So we are using machine learning. We are using robotics for entering of data and doing calculations for us that are standardized.
Is it working well for you, for IGI?
Yeah, it has been, yeah. We're doing actually complex stuff with the reinsurance side, with the excess of loss and all that. So everyone thought that we can't do it, but we are moving into it. We finished our phase 1. We're close to phase 2 finishing, and phase 3 should be done probably Q1 of next year. So we are trying to use the technology out there to eliminate all the grunt work that you have to do from a day-to-day basis and allow our talent to use their capabilities and talent to think of different ways that we can conduct our business, and you know, and that's where we find, you know, we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, so we're talking about biases and we're talking about all this. We're a diverse company without focusing on diversity. We always, from day one, hired always the most capable people from wherever in the world. Where
this is what Aida told me, actually.
You know, whatever gender, whatever anything. We never looked at that. We looked at always character, personality, ethics, education, experience, added value to the company. I can give you a multitude of examples of people ask me, why did you hire that person? He's really old. And I'm like, well, they're qualified. Why wouldn't I hire that person? I don't really care about age. Why'd you hire that person? They're this. Who cares? I don't care. I want a diverse population. Yes. We want, as a company, a diverse population to be able to make the right decisions for everyone that's representative of our society. So if you look at our track record, and when we reorganized the company and set up more departments and operations departments and all that, and you know, we had one female executive. Yeah. But as the pool of talent started coming in, because we had to hire, and more females were being hired than males, we now have 7 executives. Because as we created the layers within the company, you know, and year over year you get promotions. Right. And they start moving up, as long as you're giving them the opportunity to you know, and you're treating everyone fairly and equally. Right. You know.
I will have to say, you know, from working with Aida, IGI is a pioneer of diversity, equity, inclusion, not only in Jordan, but in the whole MENA area. And I think, you know, only American companies, I think, like Amazon, do have diversity, equity, inclusion. But, you know, IGI has gone above and beyond. And, you know, Aida shared with me a lot of stories, you know, when it comes to hiring process and make sure, like, women are represented within the company, you know. Good to hear.
You know, but I'll tell you, the leader behind that was Mr. Wassef, our founder and executive chairman, because he was the one that pushed it down to everyone. Right. You know, and you need that top-down approach to make sure that this is the culture that all the management and the execs and all that are doing the hiring and doing the training and the development work and all that. So it has to be pushed from the top down.
So this session is more about closing questions or closing remarks. And we will have to say that, you know, given the economics of artificial intelligence and the economics of diversity, equity, inclusion, it's very important to have artificial intelligence involved with promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and women leadership. So my question, like, would go first to, if you can give us closing remarks for Dr. Dorothy. what can companies do, given your tremendous experience at the NIC, and you are an expert of AI, to increase participation of women when it comes to the development of artificial intelligence? If you can have like 1 minute to answer it, that would be lovely.
So it's really important to go where where the talent is. Sometimes you have to also cultivate that talent. So at the NEIC, we have internships. And in other work that I do, I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. We go into the high schools and we talk to students. We show them the career path of actuaries, of data scientists, and we partner with them. We become their mentors, and if they have questions, you know, they can always call us. When they start thinking about college, they can call us, and that helps to bring more students into the process, because at some point, if you don't start developing the pipeline, there's not going to be anyone there. So if you want more women in your positions, in your companies, you have to go and try to develop the pipeline. And sometimes you have to go back to high school.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will have to say next is Dr. Olga. I have 2 questions for you, Olga, and I will give you a bit more time. I will be biased with you. So given the fact that you are an Arab insurance economist, and you're unique given like what you have done, if we want to have more female representation in the field, especially among underserved area, targeting females who potentially can be the next insurance economist, we need to boost, I would say, understanding of risk and insurance, and what we call it insurance literacy. Again, this applies more to underprivileged female who lives in underserved areas, and who could potentially benefit from studying risk management and insurance. So my question for you, what specific action can we take as insurance economists and as educator to encourage more Arab women to study risk management and insurance, and with the hoping, like we're hoping to see a 2nd and a 3rd insurance economist like yourself in the whole MENA area?
Okay, that's kind of 2 questions in one, because from one point, I believe there is a big role in funding scholarships. So a big role by corporations to fund scholarships for underrepresented communities and do that positive discrimination to bring those underrepresented communities to study whatever they want their employees of the future to be. So giving them these opportunities is really important. That is at the, let's say, moving from high school into university levels. Corporations also can play a big role in funding and helping universities develop risk management and insurance programs, and creating good programs and strong programs within the universities, financially wise, partnering with them in terms of bringing speakers into those programs from the industry in order to give the opportunity for students who are already there to network, to learn more, and to eventually end up into one of the companies.